Science plays a vital role for economic development and societal well-being. Understanding this, the Academy of Sciences Malaysia was established with a mission to be Malaysia's thought leader in all areas of science, technology, and innovation. To realize its mission, ASM harnesses the nation's top scientific minds to chart the STI direction and facilitates the implementation of an innovation-led economy for the country. ASM's commitment lies firmly in fostering a culture of excellence in STI in Malaysia. ASM does this by providing independent, credible, relevant and timely STI input of national and international importance to the country. Our network of expertise comprises Malaysian scientists, engineers and technologists who specialize in various disciplines. The Academy assists in upgrading the nation's technological capabilities in the industrial sectors by producing high-quality publications such as peer-reviewed journals, monographs, and books. In addition, ASM also provides input on current and future technology trends to be considered and taken up by the government in driving the nation's economy forward. To provide Malaysian scientists with the best opportunities and exposure, ASM actively extends its international networks and collaborations. It currently has a range of multilateral engagements with renowned scientific institutions worldwide. The Academy also champions the need to grow the right talent in STI by cultivating interests in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to the younger generation. In short, the Academy's ethos is proudly defined as Think Science, Celebrate Technology, Inspire Innovation. science plays a vital role for economic development and societal well-being. Understanding this, the Academy of Sciences Malaysia was established with a mission to be Malaysia's thought leader in all areas of science, technology, and innovation. To realize its mission, ASM harnesses the nation's top scientific minds to chart the STI direction and facilitates the implementation of an innovation-led economy for the country. ASM's commitment lies firmly in fostering a culture of excellence in STI in Malaysia. ASM does this by providing independent, credible, relevant, and timely STI input of national and international importance to the country. Our network of expertise comprises Malaysian scientists, engineers, and technologists who specialize in various disciplines. The Academy assists in upgrading the nation's technological capabilities in the industrial sectors by producing high-quality publications such as peer-reviewed journals, monographs, and books. In addition, ASM also provides input on current and future technology trends to be considered and taken up by the government in driving the nation's economy forward. To provide Malaysian scientists with the best opportunities and exposure, ASM actively extends its international networks and collaborations. It currently has a range of multilateral engagements with renowned scientific institutions worldwide. The Academy also champions the need to grow the right talent in STI by cultivating interests in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to the younger generation. In short, the Academy's ethos is proudly defined as Think Science, Celebrate Technology, Inspire Innovation.
wonderful session. I hope it's going to be very interesting, very instructive, and I hope it leads to a series of actions that will help the region and the tropics generally. You'll see at the bottom there just a few examples of publications that discuss some of what I'm going to talk about today. So if we move to the next slide, then what we know is that every country, particularly those in the tropics, have issues with respect to long-term medicine security. And there's a lot of discussion that's taken place, obviously, with respect to food security around the world, but very little discussion that relates to medicines security, whether those are synthetic medicines or whether those are natural medicines. So the challenge is how to balance this importation of allopathic drugs, developing a pharmaceutical industry, generic substitution, providing safe and effective plant-based medicines, but in a sustainable and a quality-driven manner. Quality-driven implies that it's for the patient, and we're going to be referring to that several times. And affordable, it has to be accessible to the patient. And optimizing the use of local resources to meet those societal needs, whatever those are decided to be by the government. But doing so in an integrated healthcare system. Next slide. So let's begin with the triple helix that's the relationship between academia, industry, and government. And in my experience, working together in that manner is a very successful approach. Outside of that is the knowledge society, where what we're trying to do is to use the existing knowledge to create, to access, to analyze, and to utilize that information in the optimal manner. And the fifth part of the quintuple helix is what's called social ecology. Social ecology relates to the conservation of natural resources, to the environmental impact of the research that's being done, and recycling. And so in this model, what we're looking at is knowledge creation, which provides the input for innovation. So in other words, you're using the knowledge base to create, because nowadays everybody has access to pretty much the same sets of knowledge. And this is done towards sustainable development goals. And finally, we have to ask the question, what are the implications for natural products? Next slide. So the fourth industrial revolution has about 12 components to it. And about 7 of these relate to natural products. And the ones that I want to mention today particularly are those that relate to big data, maybe biotechnologies, and additive manufacturing. Next slide. Prof. Kazira mentioned this long word, cyber, eco, ethnopharmacolomics. So let's break it down. Cyber, the data, the analysis, and the security issues that relate to natural product research. Eco, the emphasis on the environment, the emphasis on doing things in a natural manner. And in terms of laboratory practices, the practices of ecopharmacognosy, of how you bring in sustainable practices into the laboratory. The ethnopharmacology, looking at the background of the particular plant, what's it being used for, how's it being used, what's been done on that plant, what's the history of the research on that plant. And then the omics. The omics are not just the genomics, which we're familiar with, but there's a series of omics that all relate to this integrated development of natural products. So there's taxonomics, genomics, metabolomics, agronomics, and economics. Because all of these have to come together if you're going to have a successful natural product development program. And this was first discussed in an article, as you see at the bottom there, back in 2019. Next slide. If we turn now to quality control, and particularly traditional medicine quality control, we have to begin by looking at the information that is already available for that particular plant material. What's been done? How has it been analyzed? What are the key compounds? Identification of the plant has to be assured, the botanical identification. And that nowadays, of course, is a PCR approach to doing that authentication process. And that needs to be done on every batch of plant material as it's acquired. The chemistry. And I'm going to mention this now, but will come up again later. The chemistry, of course, is absolutely crucial. Getting that chemistry right. That chemistry, in terms of standardization, should not include compounds that are called IMPs and pains, because that's not appropriate, as we'll discuss maybe a little bit later on. And then, of course, you've got the biology, and the biology refers to what a series of assays that are going to relate to the use of that particular plant material in the public domain. But that's built on sustainability and accessibility. And of course, the regulations that apply to those medicinal plants have to be in line with the science that's associated with it. Next slide. This approach is a patient-centered approach. A patient-centered approach, not an industry-centered, not a government-centered. It's a patient-centered approach, because we're looking here at what is it that the patient needs. And if you see at the bottom there, patients should be assured of quality, safety, efficacy, consistency, and accessibility. I call that QSACA. And it's very, very important if we're going to have quality traditional medicinal products in the marketplace. Next slide. One of the key aspects, and I think Mr. Razak is going to talk about this a little bit later next, is the notion of blockchain technology, which is a distributed ledgering system based on cryptographic data accumulation. So in other words, at each step in the process, you're acquiring data that cannot be manipulated. So it's immutable. It's a public record of each point of movement and the financial aspects and the quality control aspects that go with that. Next. And of course, it's a continuous process. So once that process has begun, it continues to the end of the product in the marketplace, which the patient, the consumer, can access. Next slide. So let's look at the future directions as we sum up here. We're going to see expanded and integrated AI and ML systems for ethnopharmacology, botany, chemistry, biology, to facilitate bioactive compound discovery. The importance of artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to become more and more critical as we move forward. Next. Enhanced technology integration, automated processing, handheld access. We already have a lot of handheld access that we use on our smartphones. That's going to increase in the future. Remote sensing algorithms. We want to be doing stuff in the field with remote sensors on our handphones. Promoting sustainability of medicinal plants and their quality, safety, efficacy, consistency, and accessibility. Back to QSACA again. In a time of climate change. And that's really important, because one of the fundamental studies that needs to be done for medicinal plants is what is the difference in the metabolic profile that climate change is going to have on that profile? How is that going to be modulated? Next slide. So the use of blockchain technology to enhance traceability and quality control from farm in the forest to the marketplace, that is going to be crucial as we move forward in terms of developing products for the patient, remember. Next slide. For the patient, focus on those pharmacopoeial parameters which reflect quality and activity, not merely the identity of a plant. That is no longer sufficient. We need to be thinking in terms of quality and activity, in terms of what we use as a marker for that particular plant material. The improved translation of research outcomes to society. That's a communication issue. That's an education issue. That's an issue that we've seen in the era of COVID that has transformed the relationship between the results of the research and the actual implementation of what happens in terms of the public domain and education. Professor Ataraman, I think, is going to talk more about this, but education becomes absolutely critical here. Education, incorporation into graduate programs, training programs, workshops, and seminars for regulators, industry, practitioners, and researchers. Everybody needs to be educated up to date. The key to all of this, of course, is a collaborative environment in which you can, which everybody is working together towards a series of common goals that keep things moving in terms of quality. So thank you very much indeed, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Cordell. Many issues there, many pertinent issues, which we'll hopefully take up later on. Following these slides, we have next as our speaker is Professor Emeritus Professor Dr. Attaur Rahman. Let me just read his biodata a little bit. Prof. Attaur Rahman obtained his PhD in organic chemistry from Cambridge University way back in 1968. Shows how very long time ago. He has more than 1,200 publications in various fields of organic chemistry. He has 50 international patents. He's also the editor-in-chief of 8 European chemistry journals. So Prof. Atta is the most decorated scientist of Pakistan, with many prestigious awards given by the government of Pakistan. And he is also the first scientist from the Muslim world to have won the prestigious UNESCO Science Prize in 1999. An elected fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry since 2006. He is the president of NASIC, the Network of Academies of Sciences of Islamic Countries, and is the coordinator general of COMSTEC from 1996 to 2012. In his home country, he was the Federal Minister for Science and Technology for the period of 2000 to 2002, Federal Minister of Education and Chairman of the Higher Education Commission from 2000 to 2008. In recognition of his global outstanding services in the development of SNT, UITM has in fact named a research center after him, which is Attaur Rahman Institute of Natural Products Discovery, or ARINS, recently in 2013. So presently, Prof. Atta is also very active. In his home country, he has been appointed as the chairman of Pakistan's Prime Minister's Task Force on Science and Technology. He's the vice chairman on Prime Minister's Task Force on Technology-Driven Knowledge Economy, and also the co-chair of the Task Force on Information Technology. So that shows how active he is within the at the ministerial level in his country. So his topic is on, of course, on education, collaboration, and regulation, an alternative model for commercial use of medicinal plants in human health. So the floor is yours, Prof. Atta. Sound. You're muted.
Can you hear me now? Well, thank you very much for your kind words of introduction. It's a pleasure for me to be able to talk to you a little bit. And carrying on from what Jeff was saying, the challenge before us, if I may have the next slide, please, is how do we integrate the huge treasures that we have in the medicinal plant kingdom into modern healthcare, an integrated system of medicine where so-called modern medicine and traditional medicine can go hand in hand together and address the challenges of human health. So we need to think beyond the single active compound syndrome, as I call it, which the standard pharmaceutical companies are involved in, and recognize that if you have a plant extract or a fraction which is safe and effective in specific diseases, then there is no reason for it not to be introduced into modern healthcare if we can meet certain criteria, which Jeff has already mentioned, in terms of quality, efficacy, etc. And so there are a number of challenges that we have to meet. We have to establish the efficacy, carry out toxicity studies, stability studies through animal experiments, cells experiments, and if possible, clinical trials. Next. So this requires a multidisciplinary approach in which the various fields that Jeff had just mentioned, the biological and chemical studies have to be carried out in a well-organized, well-coordinated and integrated manner. Standardization needs to be carried out in terms of bioactivities of extract to determine which particular extract is the most active, and identification of critically important components through biomarkers. Perhaps the biggest challenge is regulatory approvals, because our regulatory agencies are trained in a certain manner and they are very reluctant to accept herbal extracts and integrate them into modern medicine. And so this would require education and training of professionals in academia, industry, government, and especially in the Ministry of Health and regulatory bodies. Next. The solutions lie in education and training, which is extremely important. Understanding that there have to be alternative approaches to address this huge challenge, because we just cannot afford to spend billions and billions of dollars before a new single drug is developed. China managed only, in spite of all its resources, to develop one drug, artemisinin, over the last many decades, and that was an accidental discovery. And the same applies to other developing countries. So there has to be a different approach. And I think we can do a lot, we can learn a lot from China alone, where they have gone quite far in integrating traditional Chinese medicine with normal medicine. They have laid down certain laws through which they recognize traditional medicine. They have a system through which these are regulated and certain criteria that have to be met. So that could be a good beginning from which one can move forward. It requires the sharing of resources between our countries through collaboration, through intellectual property sharing. And so what I would like to propose is that we have a network of collaborating centers. Our center could be one. We already are training a lot of young men and women in different fields of biological and chemical sciences. So networking amongst centers, focusing in a few key fields of importance. So just choosing one or two or three disease groups and joining our hands in just, so the last thing that we want to do is to do too much. So just focusing in one or two diseases and working together to see if we can develop an extract which can finally go all the way through trials and be introduced in an integrated pharmacopoeia. Next slide. And also seeing how we can collaborate. So one mechanism of collaboration that is very effective that we have developed in our center, and I'll show you a few slides very quickly about our center. There are 17 research buildings now spread on 100 acres of land, and it has a center. There is, besides chemistry, from which it all started, we have a center for molecular medicine, which includes neuroscience. We have a dedicated center for virology, a center for nanotechnology. We are working on nanopharmaceuticals, genomics research, forensic science. We have a 110-bed hospital integrated into a facility. We are doing a lot of the clinical trials recently of Sinopharm, the Chinese vaccine, were done in our center. The first clinical trials in Pakistan were done in our center, and also bioequivalence facilities. We have, of course, industrial analytical center, a number of animal houses with gene knockout animals, etc. And we have an excellent guest house facilities where we can accommodate about 200 to 250 visiting scientists within our center. And so this is something that we can offer immediately for such collaboration. And there are around in different parts of the world centers which have excellent facilities, and we need to develop this strong network of centers, focus on a couple of diseases, as I said, which are amenable to quantized analysis, and try to take it forward. Next slide, please. And very quickly, I'll go through these trials. We have, for instance, 13 superconducting NMR spectrometers in less than 800 megahertz, which we installed a few years ago for some of the larger molecules. Next slide. We have 20 different types of mass spectrometers with different types of bombardment sources for macromolecules as well as for small molecules. Next slide, please. X-ray crystallography equipment for X-ray structures. Next slide. And pilot, these are pharmacological facilities, a whole range of pharmacological facilities. So more than 100 different bioassays are operational of different types, ranging from neuroscience to other diseases. Next slide, please. And this is pilot plant facilities for scaling up things to a large scale. So we have large pilot plant units for large scale extraction as well built into this facility. Next slide. And we've been able to get substantial grants internationally about $23 million from Japan, $8 million from USA, from the Office of Naval Research for our work on marine bioactive substances from UK, Germany, etc. And of course, other significant grants from WHO, USAID, and National Science Foundation, and other things for our collaborative work. Next slide, please. This is just a view. We have a large number of foreign scientists. You see many Japanese. We have had about 120 German students who have come to study here and do research here in the last 6 years. So we have, it's a blend of advanced scientists from advanced countries as well as from developing countries coming and working here. Next slide, and please. This is the last slide. This is just a slide I want to show. I was also the Minister for Science, and we started a huge program to develop our universities. This is research publications per capita, per 10 million population, Pakistan versus India. On the extreme left, we had 44 publications in impact factor journals versus 172 per capita back in the year 2000. Then I brought in these reforms. And in 2018, and we overtook India, and we are now about 10 or 15% ahead of India per capita. In actual numbers, we are small, but per 10 million population. And this has been because of the huge emphasis on research, on bright young men and women. We sent tens of thousands of them abroad and brought them back. And so the landscape of higher education and science has changed dramatically in this country. And there was a report from Thomson Reuters a few years ago, which was entitled "Another Brick in the Wall" (BRIC), and compared Pakistan with Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and concluded that the highest percentage of highly cited papers that are coming out as compared to the BRIC countries are from Pakistan. So something really exciting has happened due to the initiatives that we took in Pakistan. So I'd like to end here by saying that the key lies in trying to develop a different approach, in developing strong collaborations, in providing education and training, not just to researchers, but to government and to the regulators and to industry, as Jeff has already mentioned, and then focusing on a few areas and then sharing our resources together to achieve those objectives. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Atta. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, thank you, Prof. Atta. That is very interesting concepts there. Probably later on we'll pick up on the network of centers in our discussion. Next, we have in our lineup Dr. Ami Fazlin Said Mohammed. Dr. Ami heads the Herbal Medicines Research Center, Institute of Medical Research at the National Institute of Health. She's a medical doctor, actually, specializing in clinical pharmacology and pharmacometrics, which has aided her growth in understanding and design of herbal medicine research at both the preclinical and clinical level. She presently chairs the technical committees for preclinical and clinical herbal research grant scheme, technical committees for the National Research and Development of Herbal Medicine and the Malaysian Herbal Monographs. Also, she is the test facility manager for the non-clinical research facility, GLP lab in IMR. She is actively involved in policy making and implementation. She is the member of the Herbal Implementation Committee for the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industries and the Implementing Committee for the Traditional and Complementary Medicine Blueprint 2018 to 2027. For today is on sustainability of natural products research with the regulatory framework. Over to you, Dr. Ami.
Assalamualaikum and very good evening to everyone present. It is an honor for me to be in this conference together with the esteemed speakers, and I take the opportunity to thank the organizers for the invitation. Tonight, I'm going to discuss the topic natural product research within the current regulatory framework. I have learned throughout the years in herbal medicine research to pay attention to the regulations of the product that is to be developed and later registered, because by strategizing, actually, we get a lot more done compared to if we are just concentrating on research, because being a researcher, sometimes we get too micro that we don't look up. Yeah, so and then having the product, like it or not, most of the products that is being sold for many reasons has to be registered somewhere, well, apart from the fresh produce. In the next slide, we can, let's look at the potential products that can be produced from natural products. The first line is actually looking at the fragrance and then the cosmetics side of it. Yeah, and then in the second line, we looked at the food, the culinary herbs. Then it can go up into nutritional supplement as well as nutraceutical. And then in the last line, so this is where I'm mostly at, for the folk medicine, of course, there's no registration there, but taking it through, it can be brought up to become traditional product, natural product with therapeutic claims. So this is what us Malaysian call it in our regulation. And then it can go up to the pharmaceutical product, which is the compound that is there before. Yeah, so this was what is always the aim, because a lot of the pharmaceutical product actually come from compounds from natural products. Okay, and then if we looked at the type of material underneath there in that long arrow, so it starts with the fresh herbs, the dried herbs, tincture, extracts, standardized extracts, and then it goes up to the compound. And compound is always with nutraceutical as well as with the pharmaceutical products, actually. Okay, when we looked at each of these, I would concentrate, actually, each of those would have its own data that is required by the regulators for it to be registered as the specific product, even cosmetics, even as nutraceutical, and of course, the products with therapeutic claim as well as the pharmaceutical products. So I'm going to concentrate looking at the last line, okay? In the next slide, what we have done is looking at the comparison of regulations between the countries. There are similarities, there are differences, but if we looked at it overall, because like here, I do apologize for the small fonts, but what I have chosen is looking at the ASEAN countries, the five, there are 10 ASEAN countries. So we are looking at the first 5, and then we're going to look at China, India, and then we're going to look at US. Yeah, but overall, in the first line, in the first row, second row actually, there is this low level of data that is required, and right across you will see that this is where the traditional medicine, some would have health supplement inside there, but mostly is on the traditional medicine. And then as we go up, I will move to the third row, which is, it says the level of data that is required is a bit higher. Here, look at the ASEAN countries first. So we've got several different names there. For Malaysia, we use natural product with therapeutic claims, and then Singapore, therapeutic products. Indonesia utilizes the words phytopharmaceutical. Philippines uses herbal medicine, and then Thailand utilized a licensed herbal product. And Thailand actually is quite interesting because they also have product categories not necessarily according to claim levels. This is herbal medicine in with Thai traditional or according to other knowledge of alternative medicine. So they've got a different categories there, as well as herbal medicine for health on its own. Yeah. If we look at in the middle row, we are going to look at, okay, this is where some countries will put up health supplements. Again, a lot of it is actually health supplements, standardized herbal products, registered formula herbal products. So that is within ASEAN. Okay. When we look at China and India, okay, these two countries are quite established in the sense that they've got their conventional as well as their traditional medicine practice going together. So they've got specific hospitals for traditional medicine. So this is reflected here. The traditional product is actually based on the practices and prescribed by the practitioners. And so these are accepted practice over there. And then we see the same level of requirement of data for the types of whether it's new, improved or modified formulation, or whether it's totally a new formulation, even if it is from the herbal product itself. Okay. Countries. And then when we looked at USA, there's dietary supplement at the lowest level and herbal medicine at the highest level. Okay, looking at this, what we can conclude is that each country requires data dependent final data, but there are similarities, like what I said, there are similarities on the type of data, but according to the level, some countries might be a bit lenient compared to the different level of product that is required. Okay, in this next slide, I'm waiting for the next slide. Okay, we can see clearly, okay, this level of claim is actually level of therapeutic claim. Yeah. So there's low level claim and there's high level claim. I think you would have got it already that the low claim is usually the traditional product that is usually the level of data that is required is like quality, standardization, some safety data there. But the moment you go up further, this is when the full barrage is required. So this is when you would look at the standardization, the quality data, the safety data, the efficacy data, and this is when also you would need the preclinical as well as the clinical data. So let's look at an example. In the next slide, the research stages for the high therapeutic claims. So this is actually from Malaysia. So this is from our recently approved, so the word is recently approved. So we have worked on this for a long time to get this guideline out. Yeah, guideline on the natural product with therapeutic claim. So at first glance, it does look like a pharmaceutical pathway, but I guess the intention of the regulators is to protect, to ensure that the product is really safe, to ensure that it really works, and it can be really daunting because at first glance, I think I was having a lot of issues with it when this first came out because looking at what is needed. But then once you sit down and once we really looked at it, this is what we have been working for. And this is where the collaborations can come in because there's a whole lot of things there. Yeah, in terms of, because we can have a look at the initial discovery, the preclinical study, the clinical trials, and then the review and approval stage. As what Prof. Atta has just mentioned, and I think Prof. Cordell also, in terms of the data, it cannot be just compound. So how we are doing this, how we are looking at it is at the full compound. And so this is where a whole lot of things can happen, okay? This is an expensive process, but in ensuring the data is there, is where we can slowly, we have been slowly able to also bring several formulations to the clinical trial. And then in the next slide, looking at the harmonization. So this is a tough issue. Okay, we have monographs, we have pharmacopoeias. These are documents that for quality, and we can utilize this for raw herbs, the extract, as well as the full formulation. So different countries would have different monograph pharmacopoeias, but they actually have a lot. ASEAN harmonization, I will expand on it later, but there's not much that's happening, but it's not happening. And we can look at it at the extension to other regions as well later. I think that's about all that I had, fully. Thank you. I think I'll expand on the harmonization later on. Rokozi.
That problem on my side. I hope everybody can still hear me. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Ami. You preempted my question on harmonization. All right, so I think we have one more speaker to go. Last but not is the CEO and co-founder of Medica Natura, Sudian Berhad, a clinical stage company focusing on botanical drugs and high-value herbal ingredients of Malaysian and at the Center for Natural Products Research and Drug Discovery, or CENAR, in University Malaya. It's a very famous lab. He has a combination of 20 years professional experience in business management, technology management, finance and marketing, and R&D commercialization, covering banking, ICT, oil and gas, and most importantly, nutraceutical biotechnology industries from several local and multinational organizations. He's going to be speaking on his experience in botanical drugs development and commercialization, the Malaysian biotech
into and a real product and facing the issues, real life issues, how we developed the product since 2010. It is quite a long journey for us, but hopefully this session will be able to shed some lights and then moving forward some improvement down the road. Next slide, please. Okay, basically, this is one area which Prof. Kaden mentioned, the economics, which will be the main focal point as an entrepreneur, as well of a country. You can see that herbal medicine market size, depending on which report you're referring to, it could be between range between few hundred billions. So the latest one is about 391 billion. And then focusing specifically on botanical plant-derived drugs market, goes up to about $39 billion by 2024. So major issues, which was highlighted correctly by all the esteemed presenters. First is the rise in research of botanical drugs in terms of driving factors. Major issues is driving factors is rise in research of botanical drugs as an alternative to synthetic medicine, technological advancement in production procedure, and low cost of botanical drugs, and growing prevalence of various chronic diseases. And then there are some restraining factors, which is strict laws and regulations for approval for botanical drugs. There is a limited scientific evidence for the safety, efficacy of plants used in 21st century, and also which does not provide assurance to the customer safety. And then, of course, the opportunities will be the growing preference for traditional medicines by consumers and increasing demand for natural medicines compared to synthetics, as which we can see some of it already taking place during the COVID-19. And then increasing number of FDA-approved botanical drugs and their application, which is FDA still play a major role in shaping the industry. Next slide, please. Zoom into Malaysia. Malaysia also recognized the potential because of the country biodiversity. We do have the potential to capture the market. And then latest data from Boston Consulting projected about 517 billion ringgit, I think equivalent about almost $100 billion potential herbal market size. But how then we translate into actual numbers, these are the activities that we have been conducting for the past 10 years. Next slide, please. Botanical drugs potential for Malaysia is huge as well, because of it could reduce healthcare costs, which is currently, there was a record stated that potentially reduce about 18 billion ringgit if we develop the sector correctly, and also potentially become an export-oriented for global market as well. Next slide, please. What is botanical drug? Next slide, please. which is when we started way back in 2010, and then we worked upwards into the industry. There was no guideline in Malaysia, as rightly mentioned by Dr. Ami. The guideline was only recently introduced in 2019. So way back, we are using FDA as our reference, and until today, we use as a reference, which is in FDA Botanical Drug for Industry, guideline for industry stated clearly that botanical, they intended for use as a drug. And then they also acknowledge the difference between conventional FDA approved drug, which is synthetic, always work on single well characterized, compared to the botanical, which is consists of multiple chemical constituents, which is rightly mentioned Prof. Atta as well, the single compound against multiple compounds. And then although there are differences among botanical drugs, chemical, etc., but there's no difference in current requirement for clinical trials, which is pointed rightly by Dr. Ami, which is I will also elaborate further on how we navigating with the regulatory requirements on conducting our preclinical and clinical studies. Next slide, please. And then FDA also recognized that many botanicals have previous human experiences. This is something that we need to zoom in further, because this is something very interesting, because we could potentially reduce the cost of development, and then also use less animals in the testing environment as well, because of the traditional knowledge will be definitely useful for us to design the treatment that intended for that particular botanical ingredients. Next slide, please. As you can see that since I think, if I'm mistaken, that 2018, you can see the number of application for IND, investigational new ingredient, IND submissions to FDA increased tremendously. This is, I think, resulted from the guidelines introduced way back in 2016. So this is where we see that there's a lot of interest in the botanical drugs development globally. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. As mentioned earlier, Medical Natural, we are a clinical stage company. We are focused on botanical drugs and high-value herbal ingredients of Malaysian and Southeast Asian origin, which is currently we have completed several preclinicals, and then recently we completed human clinical study in obesity, diabetes, cancer, and soon will be COVID-19. So the company was appointed by Ministry of Agriculture way back in 2015. We work on this one particular herb, very popular in Malaysia, called Labicia pumila. And then Dr. Ami, we work closely with Dr. Ami actually in developing this project in 2015 until to date. And then recently we secured additional research fund from the Ministry of Science and Technology for us to conduct a COVID-19 clinical study in Malaysia, collaborating with Dr. Ami, IMR Malaysia. So basically, we covered from the traditional until the therapeutic application of botanical. Next slide, please. One of the core product that they've been working on since 2015 is Labicia pumila, which is we trademarked it under SKF 7. It's a patent pending. It's the first active pharmaceutical ingredient derived from Kacip Fatima or Labicia pumila that is produced in accordance to the GMP PICS, US FDA CFR 21, GLP, OECD, CTX, and HALA guidelines. So you name it, all the guidelines, we kind of fulfill all the requirements, and it's very tough actually. And then also the first Malaysian product registered and cleared by the FDA as a new dietary ingredient, and then also the first that was submitted for EFSA under novel food. And then also the first that of Kacip Fatima that we conducted phase 2 randomized control trial in Malaysia and also in Indonesia, and then we completed our PK safety in India. And then hopefully will be the first also to be conducted on COVID-19 very soon. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the roadmap of what we've gone through as a company, which is I want to relate to Dr. Ami's presentation where she highlighted the regulatory requirements for Malaysia. Malaysia, we have DRDG, which is reference to the traditional medicine and also dietary supplements. And then in 2019, MPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency, released a guideline on natural product with therapeutic claim, which is equivalent to the botanical drugs for under FDA, which is requirements is similar. Only the name label is different, but in terms of the requirements, identical. First, we start with the low claim, which is we came under the traditional medicine category. Of course, the requirement is not as complex compared to the high claim. And from the low claim, we move on to the animal models. We conducted a preclinical study on efficacy and safety to comply to the requirements by MPRA, which is stated clearly our safety must be OECD safety data. And it has, and also must be manufactured in a GMP PICS certified facility. And then on top of that also, need to be tested in the clinical trials, which is we have to go through all the regulatory body. At least in Malaysia, we have 3. We need to go through PAS IMR, Institute for Medical Research, and we have to pass through Medical Research Ethics Committee, MREC, and then we have to pass through NPRA, National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency. So 3 entities under Ministry of Health that we need to get the approval before we could proceed with the clinical study. So it kind of complex process. It took us about since 2015 until 2021. So almost 7 to 8 years of journey. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, I'm just simplify the problem that the challenges that we're facing. Basically, first we start with GAP, good agriculture practice. We have to make sure that our planting materials follow the GAP requirements. We have these Malaysian standards, CIRIM, MOA standards, the MPRA standards as well. So we have to make sure that is genetic, the phenotype and genotype is established, which is part of the FDA requirement as well. And then you need to be, that ingredient has to be tested also in the GLP, particularly on the safety, has to be OECD compliant. And of course, we ensure that also comply to the US FDA CFR 21 and also MPRA. So that is under GLP. So under GMP PICS, this is part of the MPRA stated clearly. It has to be under GMP PICS, pharmaceutical ingredient, pharmaceutical grade process that we have to be capsulated under that environment, because CTX, which is critical trial exemption, stated clearly the requirements. And then the GCP, which is the good clinical practice, we have to conduct the study according to the ICH GCP, which is stated clearly under MPRA guideline, which is also globally recognized by FDA as well as other regulatory bodies globally. So underlying the whole process is basically we want to address the safety part of our ingredient, the efficacy through the clinical study, and the consistency, because of FDA also recognizes there's a potential of inconsistency in production. So there's a lot of process to make sure that it's always consistent. And then sustainability, because of we're dealing with agriculture, so it has to be a true sustainable agriculture practice, which is the GAP address it. So it's a big picture, it's a big thing that we have to address as a that took us quite some time, because as mentioned that we do not have the guideline earlier, but now we have, and luckily that the guideline is what we anticipated it would be as what we want it to be. So we kind of on the track as on the development to date. Next slide, please. Okay, in summary, basically the toxicology OECD compliant, all the OECD lists as per regulatory requirements, we have to fulfill according to the regulatory bodies. And preclinical efficacy, we have completed in vivo and also in vitro, obesity, cancer, diabetic, and also SARS-CoV-2. And clinical data, we have the pharmacokinetic safety, we have completed obesity, Indonesia, Malaysia, and then going to be COVID-19 soon, phase 2 and 3. So that we hope our SCAT7 will be the first therapeutic or botanical drugs in Malaysia. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the capsule that, these are the 3 products that we have produced under the GMP PICS. First on the left is the SCAT7, the standardized extract Labicia pumila. The middle is standardized extract Camphora parviflora. And then the third one on the right side is the standardized extract of Autosiphon staminis. Next slide, please. With that, thank you.
Wow. Yeah, thank you, Sir Razak. it has been a very long journey, but I would say it's congratulations is in order for Natura. Certainly, you have proven that it's not impossible for herbal medicines to be to get to this level. Okay, I think we are good in time, and let's look forward to about we have about 30 minutes of Q&A session. There's a question in the chat box, but I'll keep that to later. Let's just warm up with my question that I have prepared for the panelists tonight. Okay, right. I think, the questions I will pose to a particular speaker, but of course, I welcome any also responses from others if you feel that you've got to come in and say something. So it doesn't mean that it's only for a particular speaker. Yeah. So my first question, I would like to direct this to Prof. Cordell. So this is a very basic question just to set the ball rolling. When we talk about natural products R&D, what comes immediately to our minds is always the discovery and development of new effective drugs to combat diseases, whether it be unknown or known diseases. And many countries in the tropics are very much involved with this kind of research in one way or another, in drug discovery research, as I say, particularly in the early part of the discovery. With the conviction that since they've got the bio-D, why not we do it, right? So we have the biodiversity, so it's natural or expected that research be pursued in that aspect in our country. And this utilizes a large percentage of our limited R&D resources, financial resources in particular. This is despite the fact that history have shown that many success stories in drug discovery and development does not come from the tropics. It comes from the Western world, from the north. So this could be due to weaknesses in our technology capability in the frontier areas of sciences. I don't know. So in the meantime, the south is still dependent on the north for effective disease-fighting drugs. So my question is, should we in the tropics forget about drug discovery and development altogether and focus solely on developing our herbal medicine, our plants as medicinal plants, as herbal supplements and botanical drugs, as Chiraza has shown just now, as a means to combat existing as well as incoming new diseases in the future? So what are your thoughts on this?
Muted, Prof. Cordell.
We can't hear you, Jeff.
Sorry.
Can you hear?
Okay, let me say that again. So thank you for the question, and I think what we're looking at here is a two-pronged approach, and maybe a three-pronged approach. I think the two prongs are one, and it's going to depend obviously on individual countries, on resources, on capacity, which we'll talk about in a moment. But one of the major issues, of course, is time. And Mr. Razak has just shown you the issues that relate to time in terms of drug development. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to combat is the time factor of transitioning materials from farm to a standardized product, and how that gets regulated. So in terms of what you're saying with respect to drug discovery, first of all, you've got to prioritize what the issues are with respect to particular diseases, and whether those are the diseases you want to address, whether those are local diseases or more what I call international diseases. But specifically, one of the things that you can't do is you can't do this on a random basis. You can't expect individual siloed research groups to be coming up with products. You've got to have a kind of a top-down approach in terms of either the drug discovery or the second prong, which is the quality control issue of the existing products that are in the marketplace. So in other words, yes, you can be doing the drug discovery, but that's not going to, as we know, that's not going to lead you to a massive change in healthcare in the near future. So on a larger scale, what you've got to look at is how do you improve things incrementally, locally, and in an immediate basis. So assuring quality control in the marketplace becomes a major issue. And governments need to be tackling that for sure. Countries have got to assess what they're capable of, what their resources are, whether those are personal resources, infrastructure resources, or whether they're natural resources, and how those relate to the disease issues that you're trying to address. As we've seen, you need a regulatory environment where bringing a safe and effective, and again, go back to that QSACA determination, bringing a safe and effective botanical medicine is possible. You have to have a framework where that's facilitated, where you're not coming across hurdles that are almost impenetrable in some instances. So yes, Malaysia may have addressed some of these issues, but other countries need to broaden their mind in terms of how to address herbal medicines and getting them to people in a quality manner. Focus on the needs of the patient. What are those diseases that the North is not going to solve for you ever? Don't expect that to happen, because it will not happen. You do have to take care of your own diseases. You do have to take care of yourself. You do have to develop those programs that are going to lead to meaningful products. I think one of the things that's needed, and I have to say that a few years ago I was involved in putting on a workshop in Myanmar, which brought a whole group of people together. It brought government, academia, and industry together to begin to very seriously look at what needed to be done and how it needed to be done to improve the products that are in the marketplace. And again, I would recommend, I'm sorry about the sun here, I would recommend that there's a sense of urgency to bringing people together from various interest groups in order to look at the issue in this 2- or 3-pronged approach of a particular drug, developing herbal medicines that are standardized with good quality, that are at a new level of a safe, efficacious, approved product, and looking at enhancing the products that are in the marketplace at the moment with respect to assuring quality, safety, and efficacy there. So I think there's a real sense of urgency of that. And I think that the countries need to be addressing that very rapidly. And the answer to the other question of looking at phytomedicines as being effective and efficient, yes, absolutely they can, and I think what Mr. Razak has shown is that's possible, and it takes a long time. So time is a big factor here, and we need to be addressing the systems that can shorten that time period for the benefit of the patient.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have anything to add to that, Prof. Atta? I saw that you wanted to say something on this matter.
No, I agree with what Jeff has been saying. I think there's a lot that we can learn from what Malaysia has been doing for introducing herbal extracts into medicine. So this obviously required a huge change in the manner in which the regulatory bodies work and what they're prepared to accept. That's a big hurdle in most countries. And so we need also, China has also gone in that direction. Although I see that in Malaysia, they are doing clinical trials on these herbal extracts on humans. In 2017, China decided not to do clinical trials on herbal extracts but just decided that just trials on animals and cells are good enough in order to save costs and save time. But I think if one can do clinical trials on human beings in a reasonable manner, then that's advisable. Just animal trials are not enough. But I think it's these are lessons that other countries in the region, in the tropical areas, can learn from and help their own regulatory authorities to evolve.
Yeah, so that really sort of begs also a comment from Dr. Ami in terms of the regulatory issues with regards to to herbal products. Well, can I have some thoughts from you, Dr. Ami, from your experience, not from a regulatory person, but since you've been involved quite a bit in that, maybe you know, the fact that China has a different approach, Indonesia and other countries in the ASEAN region, perhaps in terms of our harmonization, what is the impact? Can I have some thoughts then?
Okay. For India and China, as I have mentioned, they've got the product that has been out for so long. So I think it could be like a reverse pharmacology. So they are getting the data now, but they already have their human data because it's already being used. Because like for us even, like if the traditional product, and this happened with Razak's product, he's got a product that is already registered as traditional product and has been used for years without any adverse event reported. And so what has been done there is that that product actually skipped the phase 1, first in human study. So that helps a lot because it can brings it straight into phase 2. So that helps it a lot. But as for the ASEAN countries, there are harmonization that we have mentioned before. We've got the pharmaceutical harmonization, and they were trying to harmonize the traditional product as well. The problem is that the ASEAN countries are at different levels. Yeah, when we are experiencing at different levels. So because like I knew that there are around 9 harmonization that they wanted to go through, right from the quality up to the safety as well as up to the claim. But so far, out of the 9, only one, which is stability and shelf life of the traditional medicine, has been harmonized. The others are still in discussion. So I think that there will need to be coming to terms in terms of what level will be accepted and what level are we going to be comfortable with. So this I think it still needs a lot of political will. The discussion still has got a long way to go, I would think.
The organization affected the development and utilization of medicinal plants at all in the ASEAN region. Can you hear me? Internet problem. Can you hear me?
I think
Hello?
Lost. Can you repeat the question?
Dr. Ami?
Can you repeat the question? I think we are losing it.
Sorry about that. Am I still?
Now we can hear you.
Am I still in the room?
Yes, you are. Can you repeat the question, Prof? Yes.
Dr. Ami?
Yes.
Yeah. Further to my question, with our the status of harmonization right now at the moment, has it impacted the development of the medicinal plants in the region at all? Is it going well, or?
Okay, I think I can guess that whether the harmonization is impacting the development of the herbal product. Okay.
Murphy's Law at play.
Yeah, I think if you ask me, it has not really, it's still country for country. And with the CBD and the ABS law, excess benefit sharing, I think it will be country for country unless I think that there are other sharings, because like the ABS law is quite strong. Unless we work on methodologies, the sharing of the methodologies, the sharing of the pharmacopoeias, the monographs, and because like the clinical trial has got to be conducted in several countries. We have seen Razak's example where it's conducted in Malaysia as well as in Indonesia. And I would have to commend him because like it's not easy to get into Indonesia's market and study for traditional products. So that's one point that is there already. I think that there's a lot of other things because the ABS law is going to be tough.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you there. Thank you. So I think let me ask Prof. Atta now in terms of you mentioned about network of collaborating centers. Now this brings me to the topic of collaboration. As you have rightly emphasized, the most important thing in development is, of course, capacity building, which is education and collaboration. So the overarching success in this would be to initiate and advance timely achievement of goals. However, many countries within the tropics are at different levels. They are different culturally in terms of various aspects. So based on your experience, your vast experience at the ministry level, how do you effectively manage and coordinate such multi-sectorial as well as multinational collaborations, which, if I may say, in the tropics, this is actually particularly challenging and in some situations quite adverse.
Mutuality of interest, and there are many scientists who are willing to work together and to network together. But the facilities that are available are variable from institution to institution, from country to country. So what we decided to do in our center, firstly, is to establish a multidisciplinary institution, which I explained is not just chemistry, it's biology, genomics, nanopharmaceutical, etc. Establish a system where we can accommodate a large number of research scientists to come and work here together with us, and then interacted with agencies such as UNESCO, such as the World Academy of Sciences, such as the International Foundation for Science in Sweden, and there are many others who regularly send a large number of students from Asia, Africa, and other countries to come and work with us. They pay for their airfares, and the local hospitality is in many cases covered by us. In other cases, it is shared. And that has created a climate for collaboration because they are exposed to facilities which are as good as in the West in most cases, and also to a multidisciplinary approach rather than just a narrow approach focused on one subject. So the problem in developing, as you just heard, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of funding, and that's not available. Where does the money come from for that kind of an effort? Most laboratories don't have access, but together we can work together and complement each other's talents and facilities and infrastructure in terms of development of plant extracts as herbal drugs. And that I think is, and I would like to see networking. When I say networking of centers, I'm not just talking about academic centers. I think we should be involving industry as well in those centers, because that brings in focus. We scientists often go at tangents and start going in all sorts of directions, and the involvement of industry right from the beginning helps to put things in proper focus and make sure that we are working in the right directions and making the best use of our time. So a network of centers, and there could be more than one industry involved, and we could have arrangements that those industries which are involved in the centers and are providing funding, for instance, may have the right of first refusal. It should still be an open process of competitive bidding if a product is developed, but they can have an edge over the others if they are involved in the part of the network and are contributing to the development. So a network of academic and industrial centers working together, but with focus on one or two or three critically important diseases which are common in our part of the world. Our focus should be, we have many diseases like hepatitis or dengue fever, malaria, and other diseases which are really typical for our part of the world, and those are the ones that we should be focusing on. So, and then close collaboration with the regulatory authorities in our countries to take them forward, because they need to be education. They're often Western trained. So we need to involve them and take them forward with us so that we can follow the models that countries like Malaysia, China, and India have established.
So I now would like to get some thoughts from Cik Razak in terms of academia industry collaboration, as we saw in the quintuple helix innovation model, which Prof. Cordell has shown before. We saw that academia, industry, government, public, and environment are the protagonists to this model. So from your perspective as a man from the industry, what are your thoughts about the present academia industry linkages? Is it effective, or what do we hope to see change in the future to improve this relationship across the chasm?
Yeah.
And I think I would also like to ask the last question with this regards. In terms of resources, there is we talk about funding just now. I would like to change that to sustainable funding. And I see and I view that to sustain funds, it's not only just from the public sector, from the government, it also must come from the industry. So how ready is the industry in terms of getting involved with making this a success, you know, providing sustainable funding for research that would actually bring a lot of benefits to the industry as well? Yeah.
I think from the Malaysia context, I have to look at from Malaysia context. We are not alien when it comes to the collaboration between industry and the university. In fact, our company was a spin-off from one of the public university, which is University Putra Malaysia. We started from, we commercialized the research from University Putra Malaysia, and then Labisia Pumila itself was research conducted by Prof. Zahiri Ismail from University Science Malaysia. So the collaboration is already intact in place. I think the challenge is navigating the industry regulatory requirement, which is very new to everybody. In fact, as I said, Malaysia does not have even a guidelines when we started way back in 2015. So it kind of this is very important, where this is where we work closely with the researchers as well of with regulatory body. We do meet them, we discuss, we kind of having dialogues on how to move forward with the industry development, and of course from the and then what kind of assistance that we need and what kind of sort of challenges that we face. So it's kind of continuous engagement. There is no one fixed model. It has to be it has to be continuously discussed in an open manner, discussing the
Dynamic.
challenges. Yeah, the dynamic, you have to acknowledge the dynamic, because that is where things change can take place. For example, that if I can say that when we started with our Labisia Pumila, we were about to embark into our clinical study, there was no guideline. And then we had a dialogue with MPRA. We shared our experience, we shared our challenges, what we have achieved. We have gone through all the process, guided by, of course, as I said earlier, that we guided by the FDA guidelines. And then they kind of, and then we dive deep together. And that this is where in 2019, they released the guidelines. In fact, the guidelines already in there, but it's just a matter of maybe they want to get also from some feedback from the real experience of industry experience. So this is where in 2019, they released a guideline. And then, yeah, I guess
Apart from the guidelines, what about the last part of my question? I think that is very burning.
Okay.
In terms of financial resources.
This is another interesting part. Is Malaysia kind of we do have quite significant of government involvement in research and development. Okay, there's a grants, research grants that given to the to institutions and also to industries, which is that you need to work with the industry collaboration and public universities or public institution collaboration. So that's kind of unique to Malaysia context. But however, of course, there are also limitations to the funding resources. This is where, as industry, we need to raise funds. So we still have to talk to potential investors locally and internationally. We're still talking, and then one way of we see that to increase our funding capability is by going listing. So that is the only way that we can see how we can ensure that there's a continuous enough sufficient fund for us to conduct R&D activities, because it's not cheap. It's expensive because regulatory wise, because you see there was no harmonization. You need to deal country by country. Each country deals things differently, but interestingly, the underlying, they still look at the GLP, the 4Gs, the GLP, GCP, GAP, the Gs. So only that the navigation takes kind of a bit more effort to penetrate.
Those are very cost intensive
Yes,
processes.
time and cost. Yeah.
So both sides of the chasm have to work very, very hard to make
yes, it's a continuous
success.
discussion, dialogue. Yes, you need to do that.
Right.
It's no one-stop solution. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we need very strong collaboration across academia and industry,
And
with the great
regulatory.
support from the
And
government.
regulatory. Yeah, regulatory is very important because they need to understand the work, the challenges, and then from there is where the regulation comes in.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Raza. That's a very, appreciate the response there. So time is as of essence. I'm like I've got so many questions to ask, but I see questions coming up in the chat box. So I should give some credit to the participants to get their answers, to get their questions answered. Let me go now. Right, there is a question from the floor asking Prof. Cordell. Would you kindly elaborate further on the blockchain technology as applied to quality control of herbal medicine? And I think after this, perhaps I will get also, in answering this question, Mr. Razak could also give your viewpoints of this BCT from the industrial perspective. Prof. Cordell, can you start by addressing that?
Sure.
Would you like
I think what.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I unmuted? Yeah.
No.
So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I think one of the major concerns that patients have with respect to medicinal products based on plants that are in the marketplace is the quality and the reproducibility, the consistency. And one of the aspects that I can't go to the slides, unfortunately, but I have a slide which shows this whole process of how quality data and analytical data can be accrued at each step in the process from the farm, in terms of the identification of the plant, whether as it proceeds through the various stages of transport, of processing, of product development, of transport again to the retail operation, and actually being in the hands of the patient. And the question here is the fact that you have a system which provides you with quality control that is observable at each stage should reduce one of the major problems in the quality control of traditional medicines, which is various forms of contamination, whether that's accidental or whether that's deliberate, in terms of substitution of plant materials, substitution of plant parts, addition of synthetic drugs to enhance the materials. I mean, it's estimated that somewhere around 25% of all traditional medicines that are available on the market are in fact contaminated in some form or another. And that does not help the healthcare system whatsoever. So I think that this notion of having essentially a stepwise process which is recorded and is available and reflects on a quality determination at each stage in the process should enhance the end product for the benefit of the patient. And I think what needs to be done, quite frankly, and it's already being done with foods in many parts of the world, is implementation in terms of pilot studies, in terms of practical demonstration that this will actually work and end up with a different level of a product that's available to the patient.
You're on mute, Dr. Kozeda.
Sorry. Yeah, so my question is now directed to Mr. Raza. You know, do you see this happening in the tropics? It's a very cost incentive process, having the whole continuum to be established.
Actually, we have used blockchain in our clinical study in Indonesia. So we already applied blockchain in our clinical study in Indonesia. But basically, when I see that blockchain is to provide data integrity. You know, there's a traceability of the source of data and how this data is being transmitted and translated and so on and so forth. But I think the most important thing is blockchain is only part of the whole puzzle that I showed earlier. You still need to address the safety and efficacy and a lot of other things the related to the concern of consumers. Rightly mentioned that a lot of people taking shortcuts, cut corners, and taking the advantage of so-called traditional claims or natural claims, but then they use some illegal or substance to give that so-called health effects, which is tremendously a lot of issues that has to be addressed. In fact, Malaysia also facing a lot of adulterated products where this is where the genuine players, I think at the end of the day, you can only have so much regulatory, but the players also is important that you are dealing with human life. So there must be some sort of responsibility when you want to sell a product, your product must be safe to be consumed, and then you do not shortchange or the consumers. So I guess that's philosophy of the institutions is very important. The rest of it, whatever that you put in place, if they still want to cut corners, they'll find ways to cut corners. I guess
that nicely puts us to what Prof. Cordell mentioned about patient is number one, yeah? QSECA for the patient.
Yeah. You need to be the patient.
So,
your objective to address it. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'll manage one more question here is about a question on education. Would a common multidisciplinary postgraduate program in natural sciences, regulatory and entrepreneurship be viable? I suppose in order to move the herbal medicine industry or traditional medicine industry forward. Perhaps Prof. Atta can address that.
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. I think that we should have training in the universities with such courses introduced so that our students are prepared to think about the various challenges that are involved in this field. And then when they join the industry later, they are aware of those challenges and they can try and address them. At the moment, we find that in most countries, including my country, Pakistan, there are very clear silos. The medical doctors, they don't believe that all these herbal drugs, they think this all hocus pocus. It's a magic. It's all magic, and it doesn't really work, and we are just fooling the people. And whereas those local practitioners are firmly entrenched and think that they work. So ultimately, science provides the answer, and we need to have reproducible, high quality science which can be trusted by by the West as well as our own doctors. And in order to do that, we need to have training programs such as courses in the institution. We need to have joint groups formed. This networking networking could be one way of going about doing it. There could be network of regulatory bodies as well, which can help the regulators to learn from each other, because that's, I think, vitally important. Because without a progressive regulatory system, you will not be able to move forward. So yes, I think absolutely that training and education are absolutely vital in this whole area. And my question to you now, Dr. Khizra, is what happens next? We have had a very good discussion. There's been a lot of ideas floated. What happens next? What and when?
Thank you, Prof. Atta.
Two questions to you. Yeah, we have lost you, I think.
Thank you, Prof. Atta. I think we are running out of time. So, but before we end, I would just, yeah, there's ideas shared. And right. In the last, in the last few minutes. Can you hear me?
We are losing you, but we can hear you now. So please go ahead.
Okay, right. Am I online? For the last few minutes that we have. So, yeah. I worry a lot about Murphy's Law. It happens to me all the time. Okay, so let's wrap this up, right? So there's many ideas then and shared and discussed, and I really felt that 90 minutes is just impossible to tackle everything. There are many questions still in the chat box, so we'll try to address those and perhaps get the speakers to give the answers. But before we end, let me give you 30 seconds each, perhaps, to relay the main message you want to give to the audience tonight. Is the future indeed for natural products indeed in the tropics? So perhaps we'll start one by one, starting with Prof. Cordell, then Prof. Atta, Dr. Ami, and then lastly Dr. Raza, Mr. Raza. Okay, go ahead. Okay, Prof. Cordell.
I think there's a lot that we agree on here. Collaborate is number one. Prioritize what you're doing and how you're doing it. Think sustainably. Educate and train. Conserve what you have. We haven't talked about that very much, but conservation of resources is absolutely critical. And develop an action plan. Stop what you're doing now. Think about what you're doing. Develop an action plan for the future, for the short term and for the long term future, based on patient needs.
Okay, Prof. Atta?
Yes, I just agreeing with what Jeff has just said. I would say that what we need to do is perhaps, Dr. Khozira, you could form a committee of a few people from academia and industry who could work out a time-bound action plan of what we can do together and share that plan with each other and refine it so that this leads on to something tangible. And as I said earlier, our center would be very happy to be involved in any network that you may form, but you can identify good centers in the region and also perhaps in the West who might want to join us. And we can work together towards trying to address a few specific diseases that we have in our part of the world.
Thank you, Prof. Atta. Okay, Dr. Ami? Any words from you?
Yeah, I think I've got, because like the two profs have actually summarized it quite concretely. But I think
support.
my word would be, it's possible, the possibilities are there, so we can do it.
Yeah. Mr. Raza, you have the last word today.
Okay. I guess that yeah, we need to come up with the action plan and then produce tangible results where it can benefit the humankind. And then we have done it. And I think that with our past experience, collaboration, and then I believe that we can cut short the process. I mean, not sacrificing the regulatory requirement, but still the lesson learned will be benefiting, coming out more products in the future. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So as Prof. Atta rightly say, a plan and Prof. Cordell say, an action plan is should be the next step in our endeavor. I hope that this session has actually amalgamated all the issues there, the important issues, so that a few recommendations can be actually prepared through a report which will be prepared by myself and Dr. Amira, my rapporteur. We will certainly put this into the recommendations to put forth to the committee to have a look, and I suppose this will be presented at the ministry level. So for tonight, it has been a tremendous experience for me, learning experience for me in terms of sharing this with you, and I think we had a pretty good discussion. Too bad time is not on our side, and I hope that this session gives rise to another Trop Science 2, perhaps, where we can continue to talk more about this matter with a larger, maybe larger, a lot more time to discuss all the pertinent issues and get more people involved. So with that, I will bid you thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, and I hope to see you very soon in the near future, without COVID, of course. And for Prof. Cordell, have a good day. And the others, of course, before that, please join the communique session with Datuk Mazlan. And with that, I will say good night and all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Fi amanillah.
Thank you, Khazira. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good
See
night.
you
Good night.
soon. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye for now. Yeah.